This time on Poll Hub, a lot of people have spent a lot of time talking about how AI is going to change the world. But a few forecasters suggest something else is more likely to rejigger humanity: new weight loss drugs. We're going to look at that. Then, this will be a year of polls, a lot of them, mainly asking the same question: who are you going to vote for? But pollsters have other ways of getting at the same thing, and we're looking at some really weird questions about candidates that pollsters have asked. And we end with a question, another one, about sacrifice. And as we found in the fun fact in the past, the most interesting thing about this thing may be the options the pollsters provide. Lots to get to. Let's do it. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Poll Hub. I'm JD Dapper.
I'm Barbara Carvalho.
And I'm Lee Marigoff.
As noted in the open, we spent a lot of time talking about AI, or we don't, but a lot of people have been talking a lot about AI and how it's going to change the world and everything. But there are a couple of forecasters who have been very on the money over the years who have said, and it's been about a year now, I've been reading them, talking about how some of these new weight loss drugs, which are derived from diabetes drugs, really have the potential to dramatically change humanity in ways that we may not think about all the pieces of this. For instance, obesity is a cause of so many health problems in America and around the world. All of these things may be able to be mitigated by one simple thing, which is a weight loss drug that would control these things. So it has the potential, these drugs, this class of drugs, have the potential to really radically change human health, for instance. But it's a long way to get there, as we know with any of these drugs. Couple of quick things. The obesity rate in the U.S. is at 42% almost. It's gone from 1999 to 2017, which is the last time that this has been measured. It's gone from 30.5% to 42.4%, so about 42%. At this same time, severe obesity increased from 4.7 to 9.2%. And the annual medical cost in the U.S. of obesity was almost $173 billion in 2019. So, you've heard about these drugs, right? There's an injectable one, there's others. Thoughts first, and then let's look at some of the polling around this.
Sure. Well, also to put these numbers in context, I know some people think of the BMI scale as being updated every now and then, and it's not a coincidence that the numbers you cite, Jay, from 1999 to 2017, 1998 was the last time that the BMI was updated. So this is real change. This isn't just something that's happening because people who measure these things decided to change the scale on us. But I think one of the positive developments of this new interest in understanding obesity, understanding weight loss, is the attention that it is focused on, I think, the biological reasons for why people gain weight, not just the food industry, not just the willpower and the psychological issues, but really honing in on what are the aspects of our metabolism, of the way we consume and use what we consume, that I think is changing the whole mindset behind weight loss. And I think that is a really good thing. I will weigh in on, no pun intended, but I will weigh in on these particular drugs in just a sec, but I'm sure, Lee, you have a couple of observations too.
Yeah, I'm a little doubting of all this. I think this may all be the latest panacea to a serious problem. I recall I forget what they call it, but it was basically people were doing the stomach surgery. And it was we saw some TV people doing this, and I think everybody knows a couple of people may have done this, and it seems to have been a lot to go through, and then the results are not too promising in many instances. I myself am a little worried about whether this is going to be a safe and effective weight loss to regain the weight. And I come down on the safety side. I'm just a little concerned about what some of the implications might be in the fine print about what some of the questions are for this. I'm a little concerned. I'm also wondering whether this would become more popular than wearing a mask to prevent COVID. Do we buy the science? You will buy the science.
Yeah, that's
popping a pill versus wearing a mask. I go with a mask to get my health
Yeah.
in shape. I don't know.
No, Lee, not even that.
Well, actually, the mask stops us from eating too.
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
But Lee, that's such a good point, because if you think about a lot of the vaccine denials that's going on, you got to wonder if some of those people are going to be, eager to be taking these other drugs, which are a lot less proven in some cases. But I think it's a good point, and we get at that in some of the polling we've seen. There's been polling around this because these drugs are out in the market, and there's a lot of discussion about them. I think we see some celebrities who are terribly bad shape, not very obese, and they're taking them so they can lose the extra 10 pounds. And I think there's a lifestyle issue. There's a lot going on here, but here's what some of the polling has shown. KFF, Kaiser Health Tracking poll, 45% of Americans are at least somewhat interested in taking a prescription weight loss drug like Ozempic and some of these others. Although many lose interest in this poll when after finding out about potential financial and medical drawbacks. These are expensive right now, very expensive. Of those who said that they were trying to lose weight, 59% said they would be interested in a safe and effective weight loss drug. That makes sense. 16% of those said they would remain interested if it was not covered by insurance or if the USDA did not approve the drug for weight loss for different conditions. So that number drops a lot. I think that Lee gets to your point that there's a lot of weight loss miracle cures that have been out there for a long time. There's been a lot out there, a lot of promises made. Doesn't always work out. And I think we're seeing that reflected in some of these polls, right? Some resistance to the idea that this is a miracle until it's proven as this group of drugs as some sort of effective weight loss treatment.
Yeah, and I think the Kaiser Family Foundation went on to ask also a number of questions, not just about insurance and payment and the FDA approval of it, but also how the drugs are being taken. People would much prefer if it was a simple pill rather than these weekly injections. And I think one of the biggest drawbacks is the fact that if you stop the drugs, you start gaining weight. And so I think just like many of the other options that people have had for weight loss, it's just a short-term solution. Now, certainly this is a very positive development for people, as you guys have mentioned, who have been facing perhaps more significant surgery to get their weight back under control. This is something that can have a major impact, not only on their lifestyle, but on their health, both in the short term and the long term. So there are a lot of positives, and still, until we start looking down the road of body image and using this as a quick fix to get into that dress for a special event.
Yeah, there may not be a free lunch for this, indeed.
Well, Lee,
I'm trying to get I'm trying to get there also.
You got there. No, and there was a scale joke in there earlier too. I think probably you were talking about it on a scale, and it was like, I figured I wouldn't weigh in on that one. Just one last thing on this, because I think it is interesting. When we talk about this, is you got to take it all the time. There's a bit of a lifestyle element to this, even though there are clearly some dramatic health benefits for people who are morbidly obese. So not to downplay that, but think about Rogaine or the hair loss drugs. Think about the erectile dysfunction drugs. Think about these lifestyle drugs that the pharmaceutical companies have invested a lot in, and they've made billions of dollars off of them. And weight loss is kind of the holy grail of that, I think.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot to watch here. And I will come back to what you, Lee, said, which is taking a drug every day or every week. To me, that's always been an issue. Now, a lot of people do that for all kinds of various medical conditions. But the safety of that, I don't think you see that in a couple of years worth of people taking it. These are longer term things. And so I think there's the jury's out on this one for sure. And like you said, you can't have a free lunch. So we'll let you have that.
As we like to say in polling, switching topics. And a big topic that we will be discussing for months to come is the presidential election. We're just starting primary season next week with the Iowa caucus, and the Marispol gang will be up in New Hampshire with a number of students to observe that entertainment. But how do we understand the polls and the results that we see? I mean, I often see people saying, well, I'm not sure whether I should believe the polls, because one poll asks the question and Trump is ahead, another asks the question and Biden is ahead. And so, in conversation, we often appreciate it when people can clearly communicate what it is that they mean. But sometimes we need to ask a question or communicate our ideas in a way that the listener will be more receptive to. And as surveyors, a lot has to do with not only where we put the question in the questionnaire, but how we ask the question. And we have experimented, as have many, many other groups, with different ways to measure how, what people are going to do in the future. And in particular, how they're going to vote. We often see, if the election were held today, whom would you support between candidate A and candidate B? Or do you approve or disapprove of a particular candidate or office holder? And so pollsters try to throw in some alternatives to see if we can ask a question that doesn't actually sound like we're asking a particular question. In the surveyees, that's called validity. In other words, can we actually ask the question and it measure what it is we're interested in asking? So although those tend to be more straightforward approaches, we're not always sure that people are going to give us something other than a socially acceptable answer. I know when we try to look at likely voters, we can certainly ask people, so you're going to vote? And the socially acceptable thing to say is, yeah, I'm going to vote. So maybe that's not the best way of asking that particular question. So some of the crazy things that pollsters have looked at is to pair presidential candidates or candidates for other offices and to see how people feel about, whether they'd like to have them over for dinner.
Barb, before you go into the list of what I call silly stuff, but it's interesting, when you talked about a question that's very often asked as if the election were held today, who would you support? Why don't you just ask, who do you vote for? Why is it support in some ways a better way to deal with this, better way to approach it?
Well, vote tends to be something that most people think is a private thing. You do it, behind a curtain in your voting area. And so to ask people who they are going to vote for, although it sounds like it should be the right way to ask the question, in surveyees, we call that face validity, which means that it looks like we're asking the right question, but we may not be getting the best answer or the most candid answer or the most accurate answer. So support is a little bit softer and tends to be something that the listener feels more likely to answer rather than directly asking somebody whether somebody is going to vote one way or the other.
Okay. Now, I sort of put you on a little bit of a tangent there, but why don't you go back to where you're headed?
Well, the idea is to figure out, and what pollsters are looking to do is to see if because voting, there are so many things that go into a person's vote, right? It's perhaps a rational decision about the issues and the policies that a particular candidate has, but it can also be about the character of that particular candidate. It can be about how they present themselves and kind of just the emotional feeling that you have about them. So pollsters will ask other questions to try to see if those other aspects of what goes into a person's decision to vote can actually be predictive of how people will actually behave once they enter the voting booth. And some of the things that they have tried, and certainly who do you want to have over for dinner is one. There were a number of questions that were asked during 2012, between Obama and Romney. One was, on a ship in a storm, who would you rather have as a captain, Obama or Romney? And Obama got 48% and Romney got 44%, which was actually pretty close to the final results. But there's other crazy ways of asking them. Who would you like to go bungee jumping with? Who would you want to have babysit your children? Who do you think would be the best table tennis player? So I know there's a reason for why pollsters try to do this, but have some of these just gotten a little too crazy and perhaps are just a waste of time?
I think that people are looking for that holy grail, that somehow they're going to come up with that magic one. And some of these, they did get the right winner, And I think it does tap into something. If you're going to ask, who would you rather have to go over for dinner? I mean, that gets a kind of like a comfort zone with a person, likability measure. I'm not sure it does voting. And I know I don't put a lot of stock in this. There's sometimes are fun. Who would you like to sit down and have a beer with? And that means, is this guy connecting with you? I haven't seen the magic one here. Who would you like to have as a personal friend? Yeah, that tells you something about it. Does that mean you want to vote for the person? I'm not sure the Biden and Trump supporters. Yeah.
That one was actually asked during Bush Gore, and it was a pretty tight race.
Yeah, I think maybe we can use a question. All right, knock it off. Who you're really going to vote for? We can go that route.
I think what's interesting here is that a lot of these are funny and kind of stupid questions, but there was a lot of emphasis put on why the pollsters missed some of the Trump vote in 2016, especially in states. Yeah. And so one of the things that is in here that was interesting is the question that was asked in 2020 by Fox News was, in general, do you think your neighbors are more likely to vote for Biden or Trump? And there's some research that was put into that looked into this question of whether people who the shy Trump voter that we don't believe existed, but if people were more likely to be honest about who they were likely to vote for, if you didn't ask them directly and you asked the neighbors. And there's research on it, and it lined up pretty close. It wasn't any different, though, than the national polls, which, again, in the national polls, we got it right. It's in some of the state polls where things get very tricky in some of these states that a lot of pollsters didn't hit the nail on the head. So I think that was interesting. I think there's something here more than just funny questions like, who do you want to bungee jump with? Yeah. That's to get a headline. But I think, as you pointed out, Barb, there's a lot of research and good pollsters are looking at ways to try, and have been for years, looking at ways to try and get at what people really think they're going to do. And just by asking support instead of vote, that's one way, right? That's a legitimate way of getting at that. But there may be other ways, too, that don't involve asking about, bungee jumping.
But, if you end up with a race of Biden and Trump, where people are so polarized between the two, I think at this point, you can almost ask any question and, kind of get a reaction. Just say Biden, Trump, who are you going for? That might do it because they're so well known. It's a rematch. And that may not be the case, obviously, 4 years from now. Well, if you haven't found these two topics particularly enjoyable, we now can turn to the fun fact. I like the first two topics myself, and I'm not sure this one, as Jay indicated in the open, covers all the possibilities. I'm going to turn to him in a second for that. But the question is, which one of the following items would it be easiest for you to give up for a year? Books, television, carbohydrates, your smartphone, driving. The number one choice was books at 28 and television at 27, followed by carbs at 16, your smartphone at 13. Not sure that's realistic, maybe age-driven, and driving at 13. Jay, you don't like this. What don't you like?
It's not that I don't like it. It's like, so we've had all of last year, we had fun facts that kept coming from CBS News, Vanity Fair, and 60 Minutes poll that just had funny answers as options. These are not open-ended questions. These are closed-ended questions. Here are your options. Pick one. And we had a lot of fun with that. This one is a little bit less fun and a little bit like, why would you even ask this? And this is CBS News. And this is 2020, so it's more recent, and it doesn't have Vanity Fair and 60 Minutes attached to it. But it's like books, television, carbohydrates, smartphone, and driving. What would you be, easiest to give up for a year? I mean, I instantly went to like cigarettes and alcohol, not because I don't smoke, but these are the things you think about when you're like, well, what could you give up? I just like driving. Where does driving come from? When I lived in New York City, I didn't own a car for 15 years. So that's easy to give up. For most people, it's not even a realistic alternative. I don't know. Yeah, I don't love, either have fun. Are you willing to give up like Oreos, or chocolate, or be serious about it? But I don't know. This one, I'm not a big fan of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Barb?
Well, I mean, I did have a little trouble with the choices as well because, I do a lot of these things with my smartphone, at least the books and the television. And so would I be cheating if I'm reading a book on my smartphone? because I kept my smartphone. But yeah, I felt though looking at if given these choices, I was a little disappointed, although it totally makes sense that books was the thing that people were most likely to be
Well,
able to
you have
give
a
up
workaround. Yeah, but you have a workaround there.
I have a
See what
workaround for that, but I think that books is something that certainly, have been kind of, let's put it this way, they're very last century. And so regardless of whether you're reading something on your smartphone or not, I think that we have a lot of other distractions and ways of entertaining ourselves and our imagination than books.
Yeah, I had I went down a weird lane on this. I said, well, what would I want to give up? Because that's how you think about these kinds of questions. I said, oh, maybe I'm not a major book reader like other people. I read lots of stuff, but not a book reader. I'd give that up. And then I said, maybe I shouldn't do that. Here I am, a member of the faculty. Maybe I shouldn't even, entertain that kind of notion that I would give up books for a year. So I said, well, I'll give up television. And I said, well, I don't really watch that much television. And I said, except football. I would not give up football. I would give up all these things in exchange for not giving up football. So I got stuck on that. I got landlocked on this question.
Yeah, you didn't actually have much football as a Giants fan this season.
I watched every game, as you know.
You did.
I don't think I could give up carbohydrates. I don't want to give up my smartphone. And as Jay said, driving? Yeah. How do I go? That's going to be a problem. But anyway, again, these are interesting questions, fun questions. Not necessarily the way we would put it together, but that's okay.
That'll do it for Poll Hub this week.
Poll Hub is produced by the Marist Poll at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Mary Griffith is our executive producer. Casey Schaff is our production supervisor. The Poll Hub team includes Athen Hollis, Hannah Tone, and Rebecca Hendricks.
If you enjoy Poll Hub, please consider leaving a review. Positive reviews help other listeners like you find us.
If you'd like to learn more about polling and survey science, check out the Marist Poll Academy, our free online learning portal.
If you have questions for us, tweet them at us at Marist Poll.
Remember, you can always tell your smart speaker to play Poll Hub.
And with any luck, it'll cooperate.
Finally, wherever you listen to Poll Hub, there is a subscribe button. Click it and the latest episode will be ready for you in your podcasting app as soon as it's released.
We'll see you next time.